Maria was the kind of person who blended into the background. She lived in a modest house on a quiet street where neighbors exchanged polite nods, but rarely crossed the threshold of familiarity. Her days were spent tending to her small garden, working at the local library and enjoying the calm of a routine life. She never sought attention, and the world rarely sought her out, what some people noticed, however, were the scars that marked her skin. Thin, pale lines traced her arms and hands, remnants of a past that Maria never discussed. In a neighborhood where appearances mattered, whispers followed her like shadows. "What happened to her?" some would ask. "Looks like she's been through a lot." Yet Maria moved through these subtle judgments with quiet dignity. She didn't lash out or defend herself. She simply existed, carrying the weight of her story silently, as if her scars told a language no one else could understand. Her scars were a map of survival, physical reminders of battles fought long ago in places far from this peaceful town. She had worn her pain privately, wrapped in the daily rhythms of ordinary life. But the quiet was not weakness. It was resilience. One warm afternoon, as the sun dipped low and the sky began to soften into evening hues, Maria was outside trimming the rose bushes that lined her porch. She wore a light, long-sleeved shirt, the sleeves pushed up just enough to reveal part of her forearm. As she reached up to prune a stubborn branch, the sleeve slid back a little more than usual, revealing a tattoo on her arm. It was faded but unmistakable, an emblem, a symbol that told a deeper story. The image was that of a military unit, its sharp lines and insignia standing out against the pale canvas of her skin. For the first time, some of the neighbors who happened to glance her way noticed more than just scars. They saw a mark that hinted at a life filled with courage and commitment, behind the closed doors and quiet steps. Maria had once been part of a world very different from this one, a world of discipline, duty, and sacrifice. The tattoo was a relic from that time, silent badge of honor that she never displayed for attention but never hid either. But the neighborhood didn't know that yet. To many, Maria was still the quiet woman with the scars, and in a place where stories were often assumed rather than heard. That image was enough to fuel whispered speculation. Despite this, Maria remained unfazed. She continued her work in the garden, unaware or unconcerned by the glances or the murmurs. Her strength was in her refusal to be defined by others' assumptions. Her scars and tattoo were parts of her story, pieces she wore not for judgment, for remembrance. That evening, as she closed the gate to her yard, a gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers. Maria took a deep breath, feeling the quiet peace she had fought hard to protect. She didn't need others to understand. She only needed to be true to herself. What she didn't know was that soon the arrival of a new neighbor would change everything. Someone who would see her tattoo not as a mystery, but as a symbol of shared experience and respect. Someone who would pause and recognize the strength behind those scars. And with that recognition, whispers would start to fade, replaced by something far more powerful: connection. The morning after Maria's quiet afternoon in the garden, life in the neighborhood went on as usual. Children played on sidewalks, neighbors exchanged greetings, and the gentle hum of everyday life filled the air. But for Maria, a subtle shift was already beginning, one that she could neither predict nor control. Maria had always been careful about keeping to her routine. At the library, she shelved books and helped visitors with a steady calm that made her a favorite among regulars. Her coworkers knew little about her personal life, respecting the privacy she maintained so diligently. But on this particular day, a group of new faces appeared on the block. Among them was Mark, a man with an air of quiet confidence and an easy smile. He was settling into the house next door, unpacking boxes and greeting neighbors with polite warmth. Maria noticed him early on, not because he was loud or demanding attention, but because something about his presence seemed familiar. There was a subtle strength in the way he moved, the same kind of steadiness Maria recognized in herself on one of their first encounters. Mark caught sight of Maria working outside, pruning a hedge near the fence. As she reached up her sleeve, shifted again, revealing the same faded tattoo on her forearm, the military unit emblem. Mark's eyes lingered for a moment, a flicker of recognition sparking behind them. The tattoo wasn't just a design. It was a symbol carrying a weight of meaning. One that told a story only those who had walked similar paths could truly understand. He approached cautiously, not wanting to startle her. "That's a unit patch, isn't it?" he asked softly. Maria looked up, surprised but not defensive. "Yes," she replied quietly. "It's from when I served." Mark nodded, a small smile touching his lips. "I served too. That patch? It means a lot." First time in years, Maria felt a connection that went beyond polite nods and whispered judgments. Here was someone who recognized not just the tattoo, but the life it represented, the discipline, the challenges, and the sacrifices. Their conversation was brief, but genuine. Mark didn't press for details, respecting the boundaries Maria had long set. Instead, he offered a simple nod of understanding, a quiet acknowledgement that spoke volumes. As the days passed, Mark and Maria exchanged occasional greetings, their interactions becoming small moments of shared respect in a neighborhood that often overlooked the depth behind appearances. But word about Maria's tattoo and the new neighbor's recognition began to spread, carried on the wind of curious conversations and changing perspectives. Neighbors who had once dismissed Maria as just the woman with the scars started to see her in a different light. The faded tattoo, once a curiosity or a mystery, became a symbol of something deeper: strength, service, and quiet courage. Maria, meanwhile, remained the same humble woman, unassuming but unbreakable. She didn't seek praise or sympathy, only the space to live her life with dignity. Yet, with Mark's arrival and his simple act of recognition, a new chapter was beginning. One where her story would no longer be whispered about in shadows, but shared openly. Bridging gaps and building understanding. And for Maria, that was the first step toward healing. A healing that came not from forgetting the past, but from being seen and respected for all that she had endured. Mark's presence in the neighborhood was felt quietly but steadily. Unlike some newcomers who made a splash, he moved with a calm assurance that seemed to settle the air around him. His military background was known to a few neighbors through brief conversations, but to most he was simply the friendly man next door who mowed his lawn early and smiled when he passed by. One afternoon, while jogging along the winding sidewalk by the row of houses, Mark saw Maria tending to her garden again. This time, as the warm breeze lifted the sleeve of her shirt, the tattoo was fully visible. The symbol, once just a faded design, now stood out sharply in Mark's eyes. It was the emblem of their shared unit, the same unit he had served with years ago. Mark's heart quickened, with a mix of surprise and respect. Here was someone he had never expected to find in this quiet town, a fellow veteran, someone who carried the same mark of service, the same silent bond forged in difficult times. After his jog, Mark paused near Maria's yard. He waited for a moment, unsure if he should speak. But the urge to connect was stronger than hesitation. "Hey," Mark said softly, stepping closer. "I couldn't help but notice your tattoo. That's the insignia of the 121st Infantry, isn't it?" Maria looked up, startled at first, but then meeting his gaze steadily. "Yes," she said, simply. "It is." Mark smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "I was part of that unit too, back in '09. It's been a long time since I've seen that patch." Maria's expression softened. "It's been a long time for me as well. I didn't expect to meet someone else who recognized it." That moment, brief and quiet, carried a weight that neither could have anticipated. It was as if without words they acknowledged a shared past filled with challenges, courage, and resilience. Over the next few days, Mark found reasons to stop by Maria's yard, often under the pretense of borrowing a tool or asking about local information. Their conversations were careful at first, touching on simple topics before slowly venturing into memories of service, hardship, and of survival. Maria spoke of the training that tested her limits, of the friendships forged in difficult times, and of the moments when the scars, both visible and invisible, were earned. Mark listened without judgment, sharing his own experiences with a quiet honesty that made Maria feel understood in a way she hadn't for years. The neighborhood watched with quiet curiosity as these two veterans connected. Some noticed Mark's respectful manner and Maria's subtle change, a lightness in her step, a softness in her smile. But beyond the surface, a deeper transformation was underway. Where once Maria's scars had been a source of silent judgment, they were now becoming a bridge, a way to connect with someone who saw them not as flaws, but as symbols of strength. Mark's recognition of the tattoo was more than just a passing glance. It was an acknowledgement of Maria's story, a silent salute to the battles she had fought and the resilience she carried. For Maria, this was a turning point. She began to sense that the past she had carried quietly might finally be seen for what it truly was, a testament to survival, courage, and quiet dignity. As the days grew longer and the neighborhood settled into a gentle rhythm, Maria and Mark's friendship grew stronger. In their shared stories and understanding, they found comfort and companionship, and for the first time in a long while, Maria felt the possibility of something new, not just acceptance, but belonging. In the weeks that followed, Maria and Mark's friendship deepened, built quietly on trust and shared experience. They found moments to sit together on Maria's porch or walk through the nearby park, exchanging stories that neither had spoken aloud in years. Maria was cautious at first. Her scars and tattoo were parts of her she had kept locked away from most people, reminders of times she preferred to leave behind. But with Mark there was no judgment, only a steady, respectful presence that made her feel safe to share. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the trees and cast long shadows over the neighborhood, Maria spoke softly about her past. She told Mark about the challenges she had faced during her service, the long deployments, the grueling training, the moments of fear and loss. "I didn't come back the same person," she said quietly. "The scars you see on my skin are just a small part of what I carry inside." Mark listened intently, nodding with understanding. "I know. It's not just the body that remembers, but the mind and heart too. I've carried those memories with me every day." They spoke about the difficulty of returning to civilian life, of feeling invisible or misunderstood by those who hadn't shared their experiences. Maria admitted that sometimes the whispers and stares in the neighborhood hurt more than she let on. "I never wanted pity," she said. "I just wanted to be seen for who I am now, not just what happened to me." Mark smiled gently. "That's all anyone deserves. And sometimes it takes time for others to see past what's on the surface." Their conversations became a source of healing. Sharing their stories lifted a weight from Maria's shoulders, replacing loneliness with connection. For Mark, it was a reminder that despite their different paths, the bond of service was a powerful thread linking them. As word of their friendship spread quietly through the neighborhood, others began to look at Maria differently. She was no longer just the woman with scars. She was a person with a story, with strength and dignity. Encouraged by Mark's support, Maria started to take small steps toward opening up more publicly. She joined a local veterans group, attending meetings where she found others who understood her journey. The tattoo, once hidden beneath sleeves and silence, became a symbol of pride. At work, Maria felt more confident sharing bits of her past with trusted colleagues. The library, once a refuge of quiet routine, became a place where she could speak openly and be embraced for her whole self. Mark and Maria often met to talk about plans for the future, ideas to help veterans in the area, ways to foster understanding and support. They dreamed of organizing community events, of creating spaces where stories like theirs could be heard without fear or judgment. One afternoon, as they walked together through the neighborhood, Maria noticed a shift in the way people greeted her. Smiles replaced sideways glances. Nods of respect replaced quiet whispers. It was a subtle change, but it mattered deeply. For Maria, it was proof that connection could overcome assumptions, and that stories, when shared, had the power to transform. The scars that had once seemed like barriers were now markers of resilience. The tattoo, a quiet emblem on her arm, was a reminder of a journey that had shaped her into the person she was, strong, brave, and ready to face whatever came next. With Mark by her side, Maria felt a renewed sense of hope. Together, they were building more than friendship. They were creating a foundation for healing and understanding. One story at a time, and for Maria, that was the beginning of a new chapter. One where her past no longer defined her, but empowered her to move forward. The gentle winds of change had begun to sweep through the neighborhood, and Maria could feel it. It wasn't the kind of sudden dramatic shift one might expect, no grand declarations or confrontations. Instead, it was subtle, like the soft glow of dawn breaking through the darkness, illuminating things that had long been hidden in shadow. It started with quiet conversations behind closed doors and over picket fences. Neighbors who had once only whispered about Maria's scars now spoke her name with a hint of respect, sometimes even admiration. The tattoo on her forearm, once a secret she barely revealed, was now a silent testament to her resilience and strength. Mark's presence and the friendship they shared had opened a door for others. People began to realize that Maria wasn't defined by the scars or the quiet demeanor she had worn for years. She was a person of depth, courage, and history, qualities that deserved recognition, not judgment. At the local grocery store, Mrs. Henderson, a longtime resident, stopped Maria in the aisle one afternoon. "Saw you with Mark the other day," she said with a warm smile. "You know, I never really understood what you've been through. But now I see there's so much strength behind that quietness." Maria felt a flicker of warmth spread through her chest. It was a small moment, but for her it was monumental. Even the neighborhood kids, who had once stared with wide eyes or snickered behind their hands, began to treat Maria differently. A few of them shyly approached her to ask about the tattoo, curious but respectful. Maria answered their questions with gentle honesty, sharing just enough to satisfy their curiosity without overwhelming them. One evening, Maria noticed Mr. Lawson, the usually gruff man from 2 houses down, standing by his porch. He nodded at her in a way that said more than words ever could. It was a quiet acknowledgement, a gesture of acceptance, and perhaps even gratitude. Maria's confidence grew. With each passing day, the invisible walls she had built around herself began to crumble, replaced by bridges of understanding and compassion. Mark too noticed the shift. "People are starting to see you for who you really are," he said one afternoon as they sat on Maria's porch sipping iced tea. "You've got a quiet kind of power, Maria. You just needed the right moment for it to shine." Maria smiled softly. "I never wanted to stand out," she admitted. "But maybe I don't have to hide anymore." Their friendship had become a source of strength for both of them. A reminder that healing often starts with being seen and understood, encouraged by the changing attitudes. Maria and Mark began planning a small neighborhood gathering, a chance for residents to come together, share stories, and honor the veterans living among them. They envisioned an evening filled with warmth and connection, where the past wouldn't be a source of fear or misunderstanding but a foundation for unity. As the day of the gathering approached, Maria found herself reflecting on how far she had come. The woman who once walked her yard in solitude, hiding behind long sleeves and quiet smiles, was now stepping into the light, ready to share her story and listen to others. The tattoo on her arm had become a symbol not just of the past, but of hope for the future. And as neighbors began to approach her with newfound respect, Maria realized that sometimes the hardest journeys lead to the most meaningful destinations. She wasn't just surviving, anymore, she was thriving. The evening of the neighborhood gathering arrived, and the air was filled with a gentle buzz of anticipation. Maria and Mark had worked quietly but purposefully to bring the residents together. hoping to create a space where stories could be shared, connections made, and understanding deepened. Strings of soft lights twinkled above the backyard, where the event was set to take place. Tables were arranged with refreshments, and simple decorations added warmth without pretense. It was the kind of setting that invited comfort and conversation. As neighbors trickled in, Maria felt a mixture of nerves and hope. This was a step into new territory, a chance to reveal more of herself and to listen closely to others. She wore a short-sleeved shirt that revealed her tattoo clearly now, no longer hidden or hesitant. Mark greeted guests with easy charm, introducing Maria and sharing a few words about the purpose of the gathering. "We're here tonight to celebrate. Stories, the ones that shape us, challenge us, and ultimately bring us together," he said. As people mingled, the atmosphere grew warm and inviting. Conversations flowed, stories were exchanged, and laughter mixed with moments of quiet reflection. Several neighbors approached Maria, eager to learn more about her experiences and the meaning behind her tattoo. She shared with gentle honesty, not dwelling on hardships, but emphasizing resilience, courage, and hope. One woman, Mrs. Carter, who had lived in the neighborhood for decades, came up to Maria with tears in her eyes. "I never knew," she said softly. "Thank you for sharing your story. It makes me see things differently." Nearby, children listened as Mark told stories of teamwork and perseverance, his voice steady and engaging. Parents smiled, appreciating the way the evening was unfolding, a reminder that connection often starts with a story shared. Maria found herself relaxing into the moment, surrounded by people who were no longer strangers but fellow travelers on the journey of life. Later, the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky filled with stars. Mark and Maria sat together, watching the neighborhood come alive with newfound camaraderie. "You did something important tonight," Mark said, quietly. "You gave people a chance to see you, truly see you." Maria nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her. "And I got to see them too. We're not so different after all." The gathering wasn't just a one-time event. It marked the beginning of something deeper, a shift toward empathy, understanding, and mutual respect. In the days that followed, Maria noticed changes rippling through the neighborhood. Doors opened more easily, conversations grew more genuine, and the invisible barriers that had once separated residents began to fall away. Her scars and tattoo, once a source of whispered speculation, were now symbols of strength and connection. More than that, Maria felt a renewed sense of belonging. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't just surviving or hiding. She was part of something, a community that valued her for all that she was, and it all began with a simple act of sharing her story. In the weeks following the neighborhood gathering, Maria felt a shift within herself. The quiet walls she'd once built around her heart were slowly coming down, brick by brick. Each conversation, each smile, was a small but powerful step toward healing. Mark remained a steady presence by her side, their friendship growing stronger with every shared moment. They found comfort in each other's company, the kind of understanding that only comes from shared experience. One afternoon, as they walked along the familiar paths near the neighborhood lake, Maria reflected on how much had changed. The woman, who had once felt invisible, now moved with a quiet confidence. No longer weighed down by the judgments of others. "We've come a long way," Mark said, breaking the comfortable silence. Maria nodded. "I never thought I'd feel this way. Seen, accepted. It's more than I hoped for." Mark smiled. "You earned it. You've always been strong." Their conversations often turned to the future ideas for community projects, support networks for veterans, and ways to keep the spirit of connection alive. Inspired by the gathering's success, Maria began volunteering at the local veterans center, sharing her story and listening to others. She found purpose in helping those who faced challenges similar to her own. The neighborhood, too, continued to evolve. Neighbors who had once kept their distance now stopped to chat, share a cup of coffee, or offer a helping hand. The sense of isolation that had once surrounded Maria began to dissolve. One evening, as the sun set in hues of pink and gold, Maria hosted a small dinner at her home. Mark and a few close neighbors gathered around the table, sharing food and stories in a warm, relaxed atmosphere. Laughter filled the room, mingling with the soft music playing in the background. Maria felt a deep sense of gratitude for the people who had embraced her, and for the journey that had brought her here. As the night wore on, Mark raised his glass in a quiet toast. "Two new beginnings," he said. "Two new beginnings." Maria echoed, her voice steady and full of hope. In that moment, surrounded by friends and a community that had come to mean so much, Maria understood something vital. Healing wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about embracing it, owning it, and using it as a foundation for the future. The scars on her skin and the tattoo on her arm were reminders of everything she had endured. But they were also symbols of her strength, resilience, and the life she was building now. Maria's story, once marked by silence and isolation, was now one of connection and renewal. And with Mark's friendship and the support of her neighbors, she was ready to face whatever came next. The neighborhood had transformed in ways Maria never expected. What had once felt like a place of quiet judgment and distance was now a community woven together with threads of understanding, respect, and genuine care. And at the heart of it all was Maria, no longer the woman with scars to hide, but a symbol of resilience and quiet strength. Months had passed since the gathering, and life had settled into a steady rhythm. Maria continued her volunteer work at the Veterans Center, helping others find their own paths to healing. She and Mark had become pillars of the neighborhood, quietly inspiring change through their example. One crisp autumn afternoon, as leaves painted the streets in gold and red, Maria received an invitation. It was from the local library. It's an offer to share her story with a broader audience during an upcoming community event. At first, Maria hesitated. Speaking publicly about her past, about the scars and the tattoo, felt daunting. But then she thought of all the moments that had brought her here, the friendships, the gatherings, the conversations that had shaped her journey. With a deep breath, she accepted. The day of the event arrived, and the library was filled with neighbors, friends, and curious faces. Maria stood at the front of the room, her tattoo visible beneath her rolled-up sleeves, her scars no longer hidden beneath long clothing or silence. She spoke with quiet honesty, sharing the story of her service, the challenges she faced returning home, and the journey toward acceptance both from herself and from those around her. Her words were met with thoughtful silence, then gentle applause. Tears glistened in a few eyes and smiles blossomed across the room. Afterward, neighbors approached to thank her, to share their own stories, or simply to offer a warm embrace. Maria felt a profound sense of connection, the kind that comes from truly being seen. Mark stood beside her, pride shining in his eyes. "You did more than tell a story," he said. "You gave people hope." Maria smiled, feeling a fullness in her chest. "We all have stories," she said, "and when we share them, we find each other." The event marked another milestone, a full circle from the days when Maria first felt isolated and misunderstood. Back in the neighborhood, life continued with a newfound vibrancy. Children played freely in the streets, neighbors gathered spontaneously for barbecues, and the quiet strength of community pulsed through every corner. Maria's scars and tattoo were no longer marks of difference, but emblems of a life lived with courage and grace. As she walked through the neighborhood one evening, the fading light casting long shadows behind her, Maria felt a deep sense of peace. The woman who had once hidden her story now carried it with pride, knowing that vulnerability was not weakness, but a bridge to connection. With Mark's friendship and the embrace of her neighbors, Maria's journey had transformed from isolation to belonging, from silence to voice, and in that transformation she found her true strength.